The reality of human relationships is often far more complicated than it seems on the surface. When someone craves you but never contacts you, it's natural to feel confused, even hurt. You might question your own value or wonder what went wrong. But the truth is, this behavior is often rooted in emotional disconnection, a complex and deeply ingrained issue that has very little to do with you and everything to do with the person who remains distant. Emotional disconnection is not a reflection of your worth, but rather an indication of their inability to align their desires with their actions. It's like a wall that stands between what they feel and what they are willing or able to express. In many cases, people are overwhelmed by their own fears, insecurities, and inner conflicts. They crave connection, but their emotional state becomes a barrier to action. For example, they might have unresolved past experiences, relationships that ended poorly, betrayals that left deep scars, or fears of rejection that they carry like a weight. These emotional wounds act as chains, holding them back from fully engaging with what they desire. They crave you because they recognize something powerful in you, something that draws them in, but the fear of vulnerability and the potential for pain stops them from making contact. This disconnection is not about a lack of feelings. In fact, the intensity of their craving might even heighten their hesitation. The deeper their desire, the greater their fear of what could happen if they take the risk of reaching out. Sometimes their hesitation stems from a lack of self-awareness. Many people are not in touch with their own emotions, and this lack of clarity creates confusion and indecision. They may not even fully understand why they crave you. And without that understanding, they are unable to take the necessary steps to communicate. It's as if their emotions are driving them in one direction, but their thoughts and fears are pulling them in another. This internal tug of war can leave them frozen in place, unable to reconcile their feelings with their actions. Another layer to this emotional disconnection is the fear of rejection. For some, the idea of reaching out and not being met with the response they hope for is unbearable. They might replay scenarios in their minds where they take the leap only to face silence, indifference, or even outright rejection. To avoid this imagined pain, they choose the safer path of inaction. They would rather live with a quiet craving than risk the sting of rejection, even if that means missing out on something meaningful. It's a form of self-protection, but one that ultimately leads to isolation and unfulfilled desires. Additionally, societal expectations and learned behaviors can play a significant role in this dynamic. Many people are conditioned to suppress their emotions or avoid vulnerability, particularly in a world that often equates vulnerability with weakness. They may have been taught to keep their feelings to themselves, to maintain a facade of control and independence. This conditioning creates a conflict when their craving for connection arises because it challenges the beliefs they've held for so long. As a result, they suppress their impulses to reach out, choosing instead to remain silent, even as their craving persists. For some, this disconnection is also tied to their self-esteem. They may feel unworthy of your attention or believe that they don't have enough to offer. This sense of inadequacy can be paralyzing, preventing them from taking the first step toward connection. They crave you because they see something extraordinary in you, something they admire, respect, or even envy. But instead of seeing this as an opportunity to grow or connect, they retreat into their own insecurities. They convince themselves that they don't measure up. And in doing so, they rob themselves of the chance to bridge the gap between their craving and their actions. It's important to recognize that this emotional disconnection often operates on a subconscious level. They might not be fully aware of why they feel the way they do or why they are unable to act on their feelings. Their craving might manifest in subtle ways: checking your social media, asking mutual friends about you, or simply thinking about you constantly. These small actions reveal the depth of their feelings, even if they lack the courage or clarity to make direct contact. They check your emails. Hey, we should hang out. Send me a photo of your sidewalk carpool. But because this disconnection is rooted in their own emotional struggles, it's a cycle that can only be broken if they choose to confront their fears and take responsibility for their actions. Understanding this dynamic requires compassion, both for yourself and for the person who craves you but remains silent. Their emotional disconnection is a reflection of their inner world, a world that might be filled with fear, doubt, and unresolved pain. Recognizing this can help you detach from feelings of blame or inadequacy. It's not about you. It's about their journey and the barriers they need to overcome. When someone craves you but never contacts you, it's often a sign that they're struggling with their own emotional landscape. A landscape that keeps them locked in a state of longing without action. Silent attachments are among the most powerful yet invisible forces in human relationships. When someone craves you but never reaches out, it's often because they are entangled in a deep psychological attachment that they may not fully understand. These attachments are silent because they don't require words, gestures, or even direct interaction to exist. They live within the mind of the person who is holding on, growing in strength as their longing intensifies. This silent attachment is not about you as much as it is about what you represent to them, a source of emotional comfort, desire, or even a dream they fear pursuing. It is important to realize that this attachment, while powerful, is often one-sided and driven by their internal fears and insecurities. At the core of silent attachment is the paradox of wanting but not acting. They crave the connection you offer, yet they are paralyzed by the fear of pursuing it. This can stem from various reasons, such as fear of rejection, fear of vulnerability, or even the fear of losing the fantasy they've created in their mind. To them, the idea of you becomes larger than life, something that feels safer to admire from a distance than to risk engaging with. This distance, ironically, only amplifies their attachment. The less they interact with you, the more they can idealize you, imagining scenarios that may never come to pass, but still hold incredible emotional weight. People often attach silently because it allows them to maintain a sense of control. They can indulge in their feelings for you without exposing themselves to the unpredictability of real-life interaction. In their mind, they create a version of you that suits their needs, a version that doesn't reject, disappoint, or challenge them. This silent attachment becomes their safe space, a mental sanctuary where they can hold onto you without facing the discomfort of reality. But this attachment, while comforting to them, can become suffocating for you if you sense it. It creates an imbalance in energy where one person holds on tightly in silence while the other may not even realize the depth of what's happening. Another layer to silent attachment is its connection to self-worth. When someone craves you but doesn't act on it, it's often because they feel unworthy of your time, attention, or affection. They may see you as someone out of their league, someone too good to approach. This perception only strengthens their attachment because they view you as something rare and unattainable. As the more unattainable they perceive you to be, the stronger their craving grows, feeding a cycle of longing and self-doubt. Their silence is not a reflection of your flaws, but a manifestation of their belief that they don't deserve what they desire. Silent attachment also thrives on unspoken emotions. People often struggle to articulate what they feel, and in their silence, their emotions build up layer upon layer until they become overwhelming. Instead of expressing these feelings, they bury them, allowing them to fester and grow in the shadows of their mind. This unspoken longing can last for weeks, months, or even years, creating a dynamic where they are emotionally invested in you without ever taking the steps to establish a real connection. To them, the attachment feels real and tangible, even if it is entirely one-sided. The danger of silent attachments lies in their ability to distort reality. When someone attaches to you silently, they may begin to create stories about who you are and what you mean to them, stories that may not align with the truth. They project their desires, hopes, and insecurities onto you, turning you into a symbol of what they want, rather than seeing you as a person with your own complexities and boundaries. This projection can make their attachment feel even stronger because they are not just craving you, they are craving what you represent to them. This is why silent attachments can feel so intense, because they are fueled by a mix of real feelings and imagined scenarios. The longer these silent attachments persist, the harder they become to break. The person holding on to you may begin to mistake their craving for love, believing that their longing is proof of something deeper. But in reality, silent attachment is often rooted in fear, not love. It's a fear of losing what they never truly had, a fear of confronting their own insecurities, and a fear of stepping out of their comfort zone. This fear keeps them trapped in a cycle of longing and avoidance, where they crave you, but never take the steps to make their feelings known. What makes silent attachments even more complex is their invisibility. Unlike active relationships where communication and actions make the connection clear, silent attachments exist entirely in the background. They are easy to overlook, dismiss, or misunderstand because they lack the tangible signs of traditional connections. Yet their impact can be profound, both for the person who is attached and for the one who is the object of their craving. Even if you are unaware of their attachment, you may feel the weight of their energy, sensing that something is lingering in the background without knowing exactly what it is. Silent attachments often persist because they are rarely confronted. The person who is holding on may not even realize the extent of their attachment, let alone take steps to address it. They may tell themselves that their silence is harmless, that their longing doesn't affect anyone but themselves. But in reality, silent attachments can create emotional turmoil for both parties. The person holding on feels stuck, unable to move forward or let go, while the one they are attached to may sense the imbalance and feel confused, burdened, or even unsettled. When someone craves you but doesn't contact you, it's often because they are trapped in an internal battle between longing and fear. This conflict is rooted in the stories they tell themselves, narratives that dictate their perception of you, their worth, and the possible outcome of reaching out. These stories are rarely rooted in reality. Instead, they are shaped by past experiences, emotional wounds, and deep-seated insecurities. For them, you become a figure that represents something greater than a mere connection. You symbolize hope, love, validation, or a dream they are afraid to pursue. These internal narratives can paralyze them, keeping them stuck in a cycle of craving without action. One of the most significant barriers that prevents someone from contacting you is the story they've created about rejection. In their mind, they have already played out the scenario where they reach out to you only to be met with disinterest, dismissal, or outright rejection. This fear becomes so vivid that it feels as though the rejection has already happened, even though no action has been taken. To them, avoiding the risk of rejection feels safer than confronting the possibility, even if it means missing out on something meaningful. This fear of rejection is not necessarily about you. It's about their perception of their own worth and their ability to handle emotional vulnerability. Another common narrative is the belief that they need to be perfect before they can approach you. They may think, I'll contact them once I'm more successful, more attractive, or more confident. This mindset creates an endless loop of waiting as they continually find reasons why they aren't ready yet. They place you on a pedestal, convincing themselves that you deserve someone better than who they currently are. This story of inadequacy feeds their craving for you while simultaneously preventing them from taking any steps to bridge the gap. They see you as someone who embodies a standard they feel they can't meet. And this perception intensifies their longing while deepening their hesitation. For many, past experiences play a significant role in shaping the narratives they create. If they've experienced heartbreak, betrayal, or humiliation in previous relationships, these wounds can cast a long shadow over their ability to take risks in the present. They may see you as someone who has the power to hurt them in the same way others have, even if you've given no indication of such intentions. Their mind clings to the memory of past pain, replaying it as a warning that keeps them from reaching out. This isn't about you as an individual. It's about the unresolved fears and scars they carry with them. There's also the narrative of overthinking, where they dissect every interaction, word, or gesture to the point of exhaustion. They might replay past conversations or analyze your social media posts, searching for signs that you might be interested or uninterested in them. This overthinking creates a spiral of doubt as they convince themselves that they've missed their chance or that you don't feel the same way. They become trapped in their own mind, paralyzed by the stories they've created about what you might be thinking or feeling. This mental noise drowns out their ability to act, leaving them stuck in a state of longing without clarity. In some cases, their silence is driven by a fear of losing the fantasy they've created. By not contacting you, they can hold on to the idea of you as someone perfect, unattainable, and ideal. Reaching out would mean confronting reality, which might not match the image they've built in their mind. This fear of disillusionment can be powerful, as it allows them to preserve the comfort of their fantasy while avoiding the risk of disappointment. They may tell themselves it's better to admire from afar than to lose the dream altogether. This narrative keeps them at a distance, even though it intensifies their craving for you. Cultural or societal expectations can also influence their silence. They might believe that they are supposed to behave in a certain way, that they should wait for you to make the first move, or that expressing their feelings would make them appear weak or vulnerable. These external pressures reinforce their internal narratives, making it even harder for them to break free from their hesitation. They become trapped between what they feel and what they believe they are allowed to express, creating a tension that keeps them silent. These unspoken rules and expectations become another layer in the stories they tell themselves, adding complexity to their internal struggle. For some, the narrative of unreciprocated effort becomes a barrier. They might think, why should I reach out if they aren't reaching out to me? This mindset creates a standoff where both parties wait for the other to take the first step. In their mind, this is a way to protect themselves from rejection or appearing overly eager. However, it also means that their longing for you remains unfulfilled, as their fear of taking the initiative outweighs their desire for connection. They convince themselves that their silence is a form of self-preservation, even though it keeps them from experiencing what they truly want. The stories they tell themselves are not always conscious. Many operate on a subconscious level, shaping their behavior without them fully realizing it. These narratives are reinforced by their emotions, thoughts, and past experiences, creating a cycle that is difficult to break. The longer they hold on to these stories, the more real they feel, even if they have no basis in reality. This is why someone can crave you intensely while simultaneously avoiding any contact. They are trapped in a world of their own creation, where fear, doubt, and longing coexist in a fragile balance. The mind becomes both their sanctuary and their prison, keeping them tethered to their feelings for you without giving them the freedom to act. When someone craves you but never contacts you, one of the most profound dynamics at play is their fear of losing control over their emotions. For some individuals, the idea of being vulnerable, of putting their feelings out in the open, is akin to handing over their power to another person. They equate vulnerability with weakness, and as a result, they hold back, preferring to keep their desires hidden rather than risk feeling exposed. This reluctance to relinquish control is deeply rooted in their psyche, often shaped by experiences where they felt powerless in the past. To them, craving you from a distance feels safer than risking the emotional turmoil that might arise from opening up. The need to maintain emotional control stems from a fear of rejection or humiliation. The thought of reaching out and not receiving the response they hope for is enough to create an internal storm. They fear the possibility of being ignored, dismissed, or worse, misunderstood. This fear pushes them into a cycle of self-protection, where staying silent feels like the only way to avoid potential embarrassment or heartache. Their craving for you doesn't diminish. In fact, it intensifies as their mind wrestles with the tension of wanting you but refusing to act on it. This internal struggle becomes a battle between their desire for connection and their need to shield themselves from perceived harm. For some, the craving is so consuming that they feel as though losing control over their emotions might compromise their identity. They may see themselves as strong, independent individuals who don't need anyone. Reaching out would challenge this self-position, forcing them to confront feelings of dependency or longing that they've worked hard to suppress. This internal conflict between who they believe they are and what they feel for you can be paralyzing. They might convince themselves that their emotions are a sign of weakness, leading them to suppress their feelings rather than acknowledge their vulnerability. Additionally, the fear of losing control is often tied to a fear of losing the dynamic they have with you, even if it's one-sided. In their mind, keeping their emotions to themselves allows them to retain a sense of agency over the situation. They can control how they think about you, how often they dwell on their feelings, and how much they let those feelings affect their lives. Reaching out would shift the balance of power, putting them in a position where they must wait for your response, your validation, or your rejection. This lack of certainty can feel unbearable to someone who values control, leading them to choose silence over action. This reluctance to relinquish control also manifests in overthinking and analysis. They might spend hours replaying interactions in their mind, dissecting every word and gesture for hidden meanings. They analyze their own emotions as well, questioning whether their feelings are valid, whether they're strong enough to justify taking action. This constant analysis creates a feedback loop that keeps them stuck. The more they think, the less they act. The less they act, the more they overthink. This loop becomes a self-imposed prison, trapping them in a state of inaction while their craving for you continues to grow. At its core, their fear of losing control is not just about you, it's about their relationship with themselves. They might struggle with self-doubt, questioning whether they are worthy of your attention or capable of navigating the complexities of a relationship. They might have experienced situations in the past where they felt powerless, such as toxic relationships, family dynamics, or so these experiences shape their perception of vulnerability, making them wary of putting themselves in a position where they could feel powerless again. This fear isn't about you rejecting them. It's about them reliving past wounds that they haven't yet healed. Another layer to this dynamic is their need to appear composed and unbothered. They may worry that reaching out to you will make them seem desperate or overly eager, which conflicts with their desire to be seen as confident and self-assured. This fear of being perceived as weak often leads them to hide their feelings. Even when those feelings are overwhelming, they would rather sit in silence and maintain their image than risk revealing the depth of their emotions. This need to project a facade of strength becomes a mask they wear, even as their inner world is filled with longing and emotional turbulence. There's also the fear of what happens after they make contact. The act of reaching out opens the door to the unknown. How will you respond? Will their feelings be reciprocated, or will they face rejection? Even if you do respond positively, there's the question of what comes next. Relationships, even in their earliest stages, require a level of emotional investment and vulnerability that can feel overwhelming to someone who craves control. They may fear the responsibility of maintaining a connection, or worry that their emotions will spiral out of control once they've taken the first step. This uncertainty keeps them stuck, craving you but unable to take the risk. Their silence is also a form of self-preservation. By not reaching out, they can avoid the discomfort of vulnerability and maintain the illusion of control. They convince themselves that as long as they don't act, they can keep their emotions in check. However, this is a false sense of security, as their craving for you continues to grow beneath the surface. This internal conflict creates a tension that is difficult to resolve, leaving them trapped in a state of longing without resolution. In some cases, their fear of losing control extends to their broader worldview. They may see emotions as unpredictable and messy, something that disrupts their carefully curated sense of stability. Allowing themselves to feel deeply for you challenges this worldview, forcing them to confront the parts of themselves they've worked hard to keep in check. This fear of emotional chaos can be so intense that they choose to suppress their feelings entirely, even if it means denying themselves the possibility of a meaningful connection. Their craving for you becomes a paradox. They want you, yet they fear what having you might mean for their sense of control. When someone craves you but never contacts you, their behavior often stems from an inability to process their emotions effectively. Emotional processing is the ability to recognize, understand, and respond to feelings in a healthy and productive manner. For many individuals, this is a skill they have not fully developed, either due to past experiences, personal insecurities, or even societal conditioning. This lack of emotional clarity creates a barrier between their inner world and their outward actions, causing them to feel paralyzed by their emotions rather than empowered by them. It is not that their craving for you isn't real, it's that they do not know how to bridge the gap between what they feel and how they act on it. For some people, their emotional immaturity manifests in a tendency to suppress their feelings altogether. They may have been taught, consciously or unconsciously, that expressing emotions is a sign of weakness, or that vulnerability makes them less respectable or powerful. As a result, when they start to feel deeply for someone, it triggers a sense of discomfort, Instead of leaning into those feelings, they instinctively push them down. They convince themselves that avoiding contact with you is the best way to maintain their composure, even as their longing for you grows stronger with time. Suppression, however, does not make the emotions go away. It only forces them to linger in the background, causing emotional turmoil and inner tension. Others may struggle with emotional overwhelm. Instead of suppressing their feelings, they may experience them so intensely that they don't know how to manage them. The idea of reaching out to you might flood their mind with possibilities, anxieties, and conflicting thoughts. What if you don't respond the way they hope? What if they say the wrong thing? What if they aren't good enough for you? These questions, though hypothetical, can feel incredibly real to someone who lacks emotional regulation. They create a mental storm that leaves the person feeling stuck. In their mind, the risk of reaching out and potentially facing rejection or embarrassment feels greater than the reward of making contact. So they remain silent, consumed by their feelings but unsure of how to act on them. This inability to process emotions is often tied to a fear of intimacy. While they may crave a connection with you on one level, they may also fear what that connection entails. Intimacy requires honesty, vulnerability, and a willingness to let someone see you as you truly are. For someone who struggles with emotional processing, this level of openness can feel overwhelming or even frightening. They may fear that allowing you into their inner world will expose parts of themselves they aren't ready to confront. This fear creates a push and pull dynamic where they want you but simultaneously push you away by avoiding contact. Past experiences also play a significant role in shaping their inability to process emotions. They may have faced rejection, heartbreak, or abandonment in the past, leaving emotional scars that make it difficult for them to trust their own feelings. These experiences can lead to self-doubt and a fear of repeating the pain they've already endured. For someone in this state, the idea of reaching out to you may feel like stepping into uncharted territory, where the risk of getting hurt is too high. Instead of addressing these unresolved feelings, they retreat into their comfort zone, which often involves keeping their distance and suppressing their emotions. Societal and cultural factors can also contribute to this emotional blockage. In many cultures, people are conditioned to believe that showing emotion is a sign of weakness. Particularly for men, they are taught to be stoic, to avoid displaying vulnerability, and to prioritize logic over feelings. This conditioning can create a disconnect between what they feel and what they allow themselves to express. Even if their craving for you is strong, they may suppress it to maintain the image of emotional control that society expects of them. This internal conflict becomes a barrier that prevents them from taking action, even when their feelings are intense and genuine. In some cases, their inability to process emotions stems from a lack of self-awareness. They may not fully understand why they feel the way they do, nor do they know how to navigate those feelings in a constructive way. Without the tools or knowledge to process their emotions, they may feel overwhelmed and confused by their attraction to you. This confusion can lead to avoidance as they attempt to distance themselves from feelings they don't know how to handle. They may convince themselves that staying silent is the safest option, even if it leaves them feeling unfulfilled and disconnected. There is also the possibility that their craving for you triggers feelings of inadequacy. They may see you as someone who is out of their league or too good for them, which can lead to a cycle of self-doubt and insecurity. These feelings of inadequacy can be paralyzing, making it difficult for them to take the first step in reaching out. Instead of risking rejection, they choose to stay in the background, observing you from a distance, but never making their presence known. This behavior is not a reflection of their lack of interest in you, but rather a manifestation of their inner struggles with self-worth. Furthermore, their inability to process emotions can lead to an over-reliance on distractions. Instead of addressing their feelings for you directly, they may throw themselves into work, hobbies, or other activities that keep their mind occupied. These distractions serve as a way to avoid the discomfort of confronting their emotions. While this may provide temporary relief, it does not address the root of the problem. Their craving for you remains, simmering beneath the surface, even as they try to ignore it through external distractions. Their struggles with emotional processing are compounded by a fear of the unknown. Reaching out to you requires stepping into a space of uncertainty where the outcome is not guaranteed. For someone who struggles with emotional clarity, this uncertainty can feel unbearable. They may prefer the safety of their current situation, even if it leaves them feeling unfulfilled, rather than taking a risk that could lead to rejection or disappointment. This fear of the unknown keeps them trapped in a cycle of craving you, but never taking action. When someone craves you but never contacts you, one of the most profound dynamics at play is their fear of emotional vulnerability. Vulnerability requires a person to open themselves up, to lower the walls they've built over time, and to allow another person to see the unfiltered truth of who they are. For many, this is a terrifying prospect, even if the craving for connection is undeniable. The craving stems from a deep emotional or even spiritual pull toward you, but the fear of being emotionally exposed is what creates the paralysis. This fear of vulnerability runs deep, often tied to past experiences, unresolved insecurities, and the innate human instinct to protect oneself from pain. At its core, the fear of emotional vulnerability is about self-preservation. It's an attempt to shield oneself from rejection, judgment, or disappointment. They may want to reach out to connect and to express what they feel, but the mere thought of doing so triggers an internal alarm. What if they reveal too much and you don't feel the same way? What if they open up only to be left vulnerable and hurt in the process? These fears are powerful, often overriding the craving and leaving them in a state of hesitation. Vulnerability, while essential for true connection, carries the risk of being met with criticism, misunderstanding, or even indifference. A risk that some are not yet willing to take. The fear of vulnerability is often rooted in past experiences. If someone has been hurt in the past, whether through rejection, betrayal, or emotional manipulation, they may carry those scars with them into future relationships. Even if they crave you deeply, those memories of pain act as a barrier, preventing them from fully embracing their emotion. Their mind might replay scenarios where they were left feeling exposed and unprotected, reinforcing the belief that being vulnerable is dangerous. This fear becomes a defense mechanism, an internal shield they put up to avoid reliving the same pain. While their craving for you is genuine, it exists in direct conflict with the walls they've built to protect themselves. In some cases, their fear of vulnerability is tied to their own insecurities. They may feel that if they allow themselves to open up, you will see aspects of them they are not proud of. These could be perceived flaws, unresolved struggles, or traits they believe make them unworthy of your affection. This internal narrative can be incredibly damaging, creating a cycle of self-doubt that reinforces their reluctance to reach out. Even if they want to connect with you, their inner critic convinces them that doing so would expose their shortcomings, leaving them vulnerable to rejection or judgment. This internal battle between desire and self-doubt keeps them stuck in a loop of craving you but avoiding contact. Societal conditioning can also play a significant role in their fear of vulnerability. Many people, especially men, are taught from a young age to suppress their emotions, to be strong, and to avoid showing any sign of weakness. Vulnerability is often misinterpreted as weakness in certain cultural or social contexts, leading individuals to equate emotional openness with a loss of control or power. Even if they crave you and want to express their feelings, this ingrained belief may hold them back. They may fear that reaching out to you and revealing their emotions will make them appear less composed, less confident, or less in control. Qualities they may believe are essential for maintaining respect and admiration. For some, the fear of vulnerability is tied to a lack of trust, not just in others, but in themselves. They may not trust their ability to navigate the complexities of an emotional connection. What if they say the wrong thing? What if they misinterpret your response? What if they are unable to handle the emotions that come with opening up to you? This lack of trust in their own emotional resilience creates a sense of uncertainty that makes them hesitant to take the first step. They crave you, but their fear of being emotionally exposed outweighs their willingness to confront that fear. They remain in the safety of their emotional cocoon, even as their longing for you intensifies. Additionally, the fear of vulnerability often stems from a fear of losing control. Vulnerability requires surrendering a certain degree of control over how you are perceived and how the interaction will unfold. For someone who values control as a way of maintaining emotional stability, this can feel incredibly unsettling. They may crave you deeply, but the idea of stepping into a situation where they cannot predict or control the outcome feels too risky. They fear that by reaching out and expressing their emotions, they are giving you the power to hurt them, reject them, or alter the dynamic between you. This fear of losing control keeps them at a distance, even if it means denying themselves the connection they crave. The fear of vulnerability also amplifies the weight of potential rejection. Rejection, when combined with vulnerability, feels far more personal and painful than when it occurs in a situation where emotions are not involved. If they were to reach out and you didn't respond positively, it would feel like a direct attack on their very being, not just their actions. This heightened sensitivity to rejection is a major reason why they may avoid contact altogether. They convince themselves that staying silent is a way to protect their heart, even if it means suppressing their true feelings for you. The craving remains, but the fear of rejection looms larger, creating a stalemate between desire and self-protection. In some cases, their fear of vulnerability may also be tied to a fear of what the connection with you might require of them. True emotional intimacy requires effort, commitment, and the willingness to grow and evolve. For someone who fears being vulnerable, the thought of stepping into a relationship where these qualities are necessary can feel overwhelming. They may crave you, but they also fear what that craving represents. A potential shift in their life that they may not feel ready for. Vulnerability asks them to step outside of their comfort zone, to confront their fears, and to embrace the unknown, all of which can feel daunting for someone who is accustomed to emotional self-preservation. Their fear of vulnerability can also manifest as a tendency to overanalyze. Instead of acting on their emotions, they may spend countless hours dissecting their feelings, weighing the pros and cons of reaching out to you, and imagining various scenarios in their head. This overthinking creates a cycle of inaction as they become consumed by hypothetical fears and doubts. They crave you, but their fear of vulnerability leads them to overthink every possible outcome, ultimately paralyzing them with indecision. Their longing for you is real, but it is drowned out by the noise of their own mind, which constantly reminds them of the risks associated with being